Welcome to Immigration Insider with your host, Attorney John Nicelli. This podcast is an educational forum on how to deal with complex aspects of immigration and pitfalls to avoid. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, johnnicelli.com. Now here's the host of Immigration Insider, Attorney John Nicelli.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Nicelli. I'm an immigration lawyer here in New York, and I've been practicing a little more than 40 years. Fortunately, today I'll be talking about a program called Parole In Place. Parole In Place is a program basically for military family members. And if you're not in the military, you may want to think about joining the military in order to help your family. So this benefit applies to people who enter the country illegally and basically have no means of getting their green card other than through the process of adjustment of status. Or they may be eligible for something else, but it might take many, many years to get that other benefit. So one of the shortest ways to obtain a green card if you entered illegally is if you have a family member who's in the military. So, and the criteria are as follows. You have to be the spouse, the parent, or the child of a person who's either on active duty, in the ready reserves, or may have been already discharged from the military, is now retired, or possibly someone who's even deceased. But if they're no longer in the military, they'd have to be leaving the military based on a honorable discharge. So if you're dishonorably discharged, it wouldn't apply. So assume you're the spouse of you're a U.S. citizen and you want to help your spouse and you're in the military. Okay, so if you're in the military, you can benefit, your spouse will benefit if your spouse entered the country illegally. The process is quite simple. You just have to basically file a form called an I-131 with documents proving the relationship and the eligibility. So the eligibility would be, 1, you cross the border. 2, you have a bona fide relationship to your spouse. You're married and living together. 3, you have to show the qualifications of the person who's in the military. So where are they in the military? You'd have to show immigration a DD-214. You have to show them that they're either actively involved in the military, or perhaps they're in the reserves, or they were honorably discharged. So once you establish all of that, then you qualify. It's limited to people who only cross the border one time, because if you cross the border more than once, that could be a problem. Right now, if you're in the United States unlawfully, and you're in the United States for at least 6 months, if you were to leave the United States, you cannot come back for 3 years. If you are in the United States for at least 1 year and you leave the United States, you cannot come back to the United States for 10 years. So the benefit of this program is that once you have the relationship to a military member, as I said, spouse, parent, or child, then you can adjust status in the United States. So if you are parents, say you're in the United States illegally, and the husband and wife crossed the border illegally from Mexico. So they've been here for years, don't know where to turn, don't know what to do. Now their child who's in the military. So if your child goes in the ready reserves or is in the full military, then all you have to do is file for parole in place. Once the child is 17 years old, the child can join the National Guard, for example, here in New York or in other areas of the country. Most National Guard armed forces you can join at the age of 17. If not, if you can go in the full military, which is a commitment of usually 4 to 6 years, or maybe you were in the military already, perhaps your parents were in the military, or your grandparents were in the military, something like that. We'd have to see what the relationship was. So assuming that your son or daughter is now 21 and they want to file for you because they were born here, but you're here all these years and have no benefit. And the bad part is that you crossed the border. So now the child is eligible to file for you. But in order to file for you, you have to basically show that you're the parent of a 21-year-old child. We need the child's birth certificate. We would need proof of the child being in the military, which is usually their military ID and their orders. Once we have that, we have to establish the relationship, which would be by the birth certificate. Then for the person who's benefiting, we need their birth certificate, their marriage certificate. We would also need, if they have any criminal record, but it would have to be a very minor criminal record, like driving with no license or something like that. That would all have to be submitted with immigration, because remember, anytime you file for an immigration benefit, it's always as a matter of discretion. So this is a benefit that is considered on an individual basis. And if you qualify, basically you get what they call parole in place, which gives you a legal status and allows you to work in the United States. Once you're eligible for adjustment of status, meaning that once you obtain parole in place, then you're going to be eligible to adjust your status, meaning you're going to change from your parole in place status to permanent resident status in the United States, meaning you're going to get a green card. So how do you do that? So the way to do it is you have to file the application, you have to show the relationship, and you have to show the family member status. So with adjustment of status, you have additional things to show. You have to show you don't have any criminal records. You have to show your tax returns. You have to show if you don't have sufficient income in your taxes, then we have to use your child's income, and we have to make sure the income is over the poverty guidelines. And there's many, many other factors. And again, I say it's always a matter of discretion. Nothing is guaranteed. But one thing is very helpful to many people. It is one of the few ways that you can legalize yourself in a very short time and obtain permanent residence. It's something that the government started around 2013, I believe it was. And unfortunately, many people are not aware of this program. So I am always telling clients, if you have children who are 17 years old and there is no other means of you to legalize yourself, please have them speak to a recruiter, whether that be in the Army or the Navy, reserves, or the full military, or the Air Force, or whatever. Once they have military service, there are a multitude of benefits that that child will obtain. Because if the child goes in the military, one of the benefits is that there are educational programs which the government will pay for. They will teach that person a skill. The parents will benefit immensely because they will get military discounts on basically anything they do. They buy a house, they get a discount on a mortgage. They buy a car, they get a discount on health insurance, on life insurance, on car insurance, on basically anything. There's multiple benefits. And for the veterans themselves, they have basically medical care the rest of their lives through the veterans. There are many benefits, and I would highly recommend you do it. I tell people this all the time. A lot of times the children are reluctant to do it, but it would be really worth considering. You also can benefit if your parents were military members, or your children are military members, or the spouse is a military member. So it's either of those three. But whatever criteria you fit into, you must show the relationship, and the relationship must be bona fide. So, and what I mean by that is, like, let's say you have a parent and child, for example, but the parent hasn't seen the child in the last 20 years. Well, that would not be considered a bona fide parent-child relationship. Or you have a spousal relationship and you got married for papers. You paid somebody to get married so you can get the green card. Well, I highly recommend not getting involved in that, because most marriages are investigated, and that could be a big problem. And you could be barred for life if you ever get involved in a fake marriage. So that's not bona fide. So whenever it comes to adjustment of status part of the case, which is the second part of it, you have to show the bona fides of the marriage or the relationship, whatever that may be. All right. Never get involved in any kind of fraud, because if you get caught, the penalties could be quite substantial, and you may be barred for life from ever getting involved in immigration benefit again. So I tell you about this program because very few people know about it. Unfortunately, not that many people apply for it because they're unaware of it. But it's something that can change your life immensely. It can change your children's lives immensely, even your parents' lives immensely. I would recommend doing it, obviously, and speaking to a recruiter as soon as possible. Even if your children are not interested, I think parents should always speak to the recruiter. Maybe they can convince, they have more knowledge, they can then convince their children to do it. Because if they go in the reserves, it's something that's not full time. They basically stay home all the time, and the only time they'll go to a military base is on the weekends. Generally, they don't go to war. It's called the ready reserves because they're here, they're ready to serve, but generally they don't necessarily go overseas or go to war. Most of the time they're here in the United States. And they have to report to the military base. I believe it's only once a month, and that's on weekends. So 1 weekend a month they go away. But the benefit is they teach them a skill. It opens up many horizons, which opportunities that they would have never had in the past. So I would highly recommend doing this. If I can help anyone regarding this, please feel free to call. My number is 212-227-8020. You can also reach us by email at john@johnnicelli.com. As I said, it's something to consider. It will change your life forever. And I highly, highly recommend the Parole In Place program to anyone who qualifies. Stay well.
You've been tuning into Immigration Insider with your host, attorney John Nicelli. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, johnnicelli.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.